I'm going to swap that.
Just fake a heart attack.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll get started. Will everybody take their seats, please? Good afternoon. The board will participate in a workshop and special meeting today, both of which will be open to the public. Before we get started, let's please stand for the pledge to the flag to be led by Attorney Stephen Mayer.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
I'd like to remind all who will be speaking today that this meeting is being transcribed in real time so it can be viewed with closed captioning. Please speak at a reasonable pace so the transcribers can fully capture what you are saying. I'll now call the workshop to order. Mrs. Baez. What's your name? Mrs. Baez, please call the roll.
District 1, Barbara McQuinn.
Here.
District 2, Chuck Shaw.
Here.
District 3, Karen Brill. Here. District 4, Erica Whitfield.
Here.
District 5, Frank Barbieri.
Here.
District 6, Marsha Andrews.
Here.
District 7, Deborah Robinson.
Great. We let the record show we have a quorum. Actually, we have a quorum and plus. Plus one. Congratulations, Mrs. Whitfield, for the new baby that's on the way. I think this will be the first. According to Mr. Shaw, who's been here since God was born, we've never had a pregnant school board member, so it's going to be a great celebration when the baby gets here. So. Also in attendance on the dais are Superintendent Dr. Donald Fenoy, General Counsel Julie Enrico, and Executive Administrative Assistant Maria Baez, and of course our board clerk, Carol Bass. There are no speakers today for this workshop, so I'll now turn the workshop over to Dr. Fenoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I'll turn it over to our General Counsel, who will introduce our guests today.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure, board members and Dr. Fenoy, to offer this workshop. Outside counsel is here, and I'd like to introduce Mr. Stephen Mayer, founder and shareholder, Mr. Michael Mayer, and a shareholder of the Mayer firm, Matthew Makwa, also a shareholder of the Mayer firm from Winter Park, and John Kiefer, a partner at Wagstaff and Cartmel from Kansas City. This team of attorneys is here to present litigation information, a proposal about potential litigation, and there will be an item on our special meeting to consider later on in the meeting. And thank you so much, gentlemen. I'd also like to introduce our in-house team, Ms. Sean Bernard, Deputy General Counsel, and Ms. Lisa Coring, Senior Attorney, and this will be the makeup of the team should we proceed. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having us. My name is Steve Mayer. I'm with the Mayer Law Firm in Winter Park, and I would like to introduce the people that are with me. Starting at my right, this is Michael Mayer, who is my law partner, longtime law partner, and also father. Mike was the chair of the trial team for the state of Florida in its historic case against the tobacco industry in the 90s. And that case, a lot of you will remember, the trial began here in West Palm Beach. To his left is Matt Mokwa, who is a partner with our firm as well. And then this is John Kiefer, who is from the firm of Wagstaff and Cartmel in Kansas City, Missouri. I've known John and his firm for many years. We've worked on many multi-district litigations around the country together, and his firm has probably tried more multi-district litigation bellwether trials than any other firm around. And he is going to be giving the presentation to the board. But again, thank you so much for inviting us.
Thank you. As Steve said, my name is John Kiefer. I'm a lawyer from a law firm in Kansas City, and I thank counsel and the board for having us here today. I am mindful of our time limitations, and I tend to talk a little fast even when there's not a clock on me, so bear with me. I'll try to speak at a reasonable pace. I have some PowerPoint materials that I'm going to show you. Disclaimer at the start, there's quite a few slides in there. I don't intend to take our time to go through all of them. I'll skip over some and try to hit the most pertinent ones. My law firm, together with a very small select group of others, for example, the Mayer firm here in Florida, is leading litigation nationally on behalf of school districts arising out of what we so often hear today as referred to as the vaping crisis. I think a lot of administrators and board members understand there is a problem with e-cigarette use and vaping by high schoolers and increasingly by middle schoolers. I think districts across the country are doing their level best to try to get their arms around this problem and contain it, but it's a heck of a challenge. And I think a lot of districts perhaps don't have a great sense of how what quite legitimately I think can be called a plague has taken over in the school. So I want to give you just a little bit of history, which I think really forms the backdrop for this litigation. Some of us are old enough to remember, when Hollywood glamorized smoking. You only have to look back a few decades to see movie star after movie star smoking traditional cigarettes. That was not an accident. History has shown that back in the day, big tobacco paid good money for product placement in the mainstream media. Unfortunately, that part of things has not changed. In the past 25 to 40 years, depending on where you want to plant the flag on the timeline, use of traditional cigarettes by teenagers has gone down dramatically. For example, this chart shows that in the 40-year period from 1976 to 2016, use of traditional cigarettes by teenage kids has dropped from about almost 30% in 1976 to about 3% in 2016. Well, that's good news, right? That didn't happen by osmosis, and it didn't come for free. A lot of the explanation for that admirable downward trend was a very aggressive public awareness campaign aimed at teenagers about the dangers of smoking. That very aggressive public awareness campaign was funded in part by the historic settlement with Big Tobacco in the 1990s that Mr. Mayer here led on behalf of the state of Florida. So just looking at this particular metric, I think we would all say that's good progress. Unfortunately, the work that took about 40 years to accomplish has been largely undone in the past 4 years. Currently, or at least as of 2018, it is reported nationally that about 27% of high school kids use electronic cigarettes. Depending on where you are in the country and who you talk to, many people say that number is grossly underreported. Some districts are reporting high school student usage as high as 45 and 50%, and this is all based on self-reported data. In 2011, less than 2% of high school kids reported they use these products. Per the CDC, by 2018, 21% of high schoolers used it. And as I said, the statistics are changing really weekly, and they're continuing to go up. This is one of the more troubling statistics that's gotten a lot of airplay recently. In the one-year period from 2017 to 2018, there was a 78% increase in usage of these products among high schoolers. What is not shown on this slide is that in that same time period, there was a 48% increase among middle schoolers. Former FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb has called this an epidemic, as has the U.S. Surgeon General. So the question is, how did this epidemic take hold? Some of you may have seen the more original traditional vaping devices. They're kind of goofy. They look like a tank, something you might light your barbecue grill with. Not a lot of appeal there to the average teenager. The gentleman who founded this company called Juul both went to the Stanford School of Product Design, which is where companies like Apple get their designers for the iPhones. And when they were raising capital to launch their company in 2015, they made no bones about the fact that they wanted to create the iPhone of vaping devices. And they did that. The chairman of, before I dwell on this slide, let me share a couple statistics with you. The company Juul is one of the most successful Silicon Valley startups in recent years. It's only 4 years old. At last report, its market capitalization was about $38 billion in a span of only 4 years. And a little less than a year ago, in December 2018, a company by the name of Altria, who is the parent company of Philip Morris Tobacco, paid $13 billion for about a 35% stake in the company. So you can see where this might be going. Juul's former CEO, former as of about a month ago, Kevin Burns, acknowledged that Juul is, in his words, partly responsible for this youth vaping epidemic. And in his words, we have 80% of the market. How can we not be partly responsible? Now, that was, at least in the eyes of a cynical lawyer, that statement was made in the context of kind of a mea culpa, with Juul testifying before Congress and giving reasons why their product should be allowed to remain on the market. The folks at Juul would tell you this was all just an unfortunate accident, that their products were never intended for teenagers. Unfortunately, their public statements and their advertising of the last few years tells a very different story. Two former heads of the FDA and a subcommittee of the U.S. Congress this past summer have said that Juul's marketing in 2015 and 16 and 17 was patently youth-oriented. When Juul launched its product, it rented out all these digital billboards on Times Square with bright colors and attractive young models. It had launch parties in different cities around the country where it gave away these devices for free. It invited models, it invited celebrities, it invited what are called social media influencers. They were encouraged to use the device, smoke it, post on social media with the hashtag Juul or vaporized, and the product literally went viral. Its growth literally has been off the charts. I mentioned they hired celebrities and social media influencers. They had a campaign called Vaporized. I'll go through these slides quickly, but you can see the age of some of these models, and it's, I think, virtually impossible to conclude that this was not patently aimed at youth. Interestingly, one of the founders of Juul, James Monsees, admitted when they were raising money to launch the company that they studied historic documents from Big Tobacco that were made public as a result of the litigation in the 1990s. They studied Big Tobacco's playbook for youth marketing of tobacco, and they studied Big Tobacco's playbook as it relates to the science of nicotine addiction and delivery. And to their, I think, deplorable credit, they very successfully deployed both of those strategies. If you compare advertising from the 1970s and 80s for traditional cigarettes to Juul's, it literally will make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. If you look at the right-hand slide, the color scheme and graphics between Juul and Marlboro is unmistakable. In the lower left frame, the color schemes are identical. Marlboro here in this upper right-hand corner, interestingly enough, in 2015, sued Juul for trademark infringement. They said, "You're knocking off our logo." They lost that case in the trademark court, and then the parent company of Marlboro turned around and paid $13 billion for a stake in Juul. If you can't beat them, join them. Big Tobacco always sought to normalize cigarette usage. Here's an ad from the 70s for Kent cigarettes. Being enjoyed with a morning cup of coffee. Juul has done the exact same thing. What's the effect of that? You only need to look at social media posts to see the effect of this. Some of these kids are virtually babies. We are seeing it now in the grade schools in some places. In 2018, an estimated almost 5 million kids were using some kind of an e-cigarette or traditional tobacco product. 1.5 million had taken it up in the past year, and about a 40% increase in the prior year. I showed you this slide before. In 2018, the FDA put pressure on Juul to eliminate its youth marketing campaign, which it took down all its social media sites. Of course, they live on forever in cyberspace. And it started advertising with older models and adults and trying to portray its product as sort of an alternative to traditional cigarettes or a smoking cessation device. There's no data even today to support that the Juul device is any safer or more efficacious than traditional cigarettes. Unfortunately, the genie is out of the bottle. Juul doesn't need to advertise this product anymore. Increasing number of kids are continuing to take it up, in spite of the fact that it is no longer engaging in the kind of social media advertising it did 2 and 3 years ago. As of a couple of months ago, there were over 500,000 social media posts under the hashtag Juul, again, many of them depicting teenage use. 7 in 10 kids report that they have been exposed to electronic cigarette advertising. And again, former FDA Commissioner Gottlieb has pointed the finger squarely at Juul as having patently engaged in youth marketing. I don't need to spend a lot of time talking about the design of the device, but I will say Juul delivers its product through a patented formulation of nicotine salts. The first one to come up with the concept of nicotine salts was R.J. Reynolds Tobacco. But what Juul has done is they've taken the bad taste and the bad smell out of the product. They've taken the harsh physiologic reaction out of the product. And it has been shown that a single hit on a Juul device delivers 3 to 4 times the amount of nicotine of a traditional cigarette. Juul is now notorious for having many fruit flavors and things that would appeal to youth. The Trump administration has indicated it is going to ban that. That has not happened yet. Juul has suspended some sales of some of these flavors. It has not suspended sales, for example, of mint and menthol, which are the 2 most popular with kids. Teen use is obviously a huge problem. Lots of these kids are nicotine addicted. There is precious little science about the effect of this kind of nicotine load on the adolescent brain, but you're seeing more and more reports of kids becoming acutely ill, kids being hospitalized, not to mention vast numbers of addiction. The statistics indicate that kids who take up these devices within 6 months, 30% of them are likely to turn to traditional tobacco products, and they are also a gateway to other drugs. And we're seeing that with vaping of THC and other products. I don't have to tell this group about the impact of this on the schools. The Juul device is ubiquitous. It looks like a flash drive. It's easy to conceal. Kids being kids, they will find a way, whether they hide it in books, hide it in clothing. Bathrooms in schools are notorious for being a hotbed of use. So what's the role of schools? At the risk of falling back on sort of a tired, old cliche, we really believe that the schools of America are kind of the canary in the coal mine as it relates to the Juul crisis. I hope that we don't have millions of kids getting sick with COPD, lung cancer, things like that in 5, 10, 20 years. If we do, there may be states and other payors who have claims such as the states did in the tobacco litigation of the 90s. But schools are literally on the front lines of this epidemic, feeling this problem today. Fundamentally, Juul is a profound obstacle that gets in the way of the school's fundamental mission to take care of the mental and physical and emotional well-being of kids while delivering a top-notch education and preparing them to be productive members of society in the next generation. And we are hearing, I've literally met with districts in Arizona, Missouri, rural Kansas, Colorado, and the stories are much the same. This cuts across all socioeconomic, geographic, and ethnic lines. Schools are seeing skyrocketing rates of suspension, distraction in class, having to allocate or in some cases hire additional resource officers to police the hallways, to police bathrooms. Some schools are putting in vape detectors in bathrooms. Other schools, and I understand your district is one, when kids are suspended for use of a product like this, they are referred to treatment, which is commendable, but the schools are footing the bill for that. It is a massive epidemic, and it's going to take a substantial solution to confront it. Litigation is one prong of that solution. Public education is another, legislation is another. Schools are already feeling the strain on their budgets. Some have started to sharpen a pencil and quantify those things, and others are in the early stages of that. I'm going to skip past a few of these slides and wrap up my comments to leave time for questions. In terms of the damages to schools, our view is the real question has less to do with what have schools done and spent to this point? And the real question is, what's it going to take on a go-forward basis over the next 2, 3, or 5 years to adequately address this? And the lawyers, in concert with our client districts and experts, will develop an appropriate damages model that focuses on deterrence, monitoring, counseling and treatment, academic tutoring, the whole panoply of things that are going to be necessary to try to abate this problem. The litigation that we are at the forefront of, about 15 districts nationwide have committed. We've filed suit for, I think, 8. We'll be filing for 2 or 3 more before the end of the week. We are adding to the numbers weekly. The litigation, and we have shared the kind of the fine points with your counsel, but the litigation is all done on a contingent fee basis, so the law firms bear all the risk, all the litigation expense risk, all the attorney time risk, and if and only if there is a net positive recovery for the district, do the attorneys get paid. So we view it, at least from a financial standpoint, as a no-risk proposition. Candidly, we view it from a political and a moral and an ethical standpoint as a no-risk proposition. I think there is one right side of this issue to be on. I'm going to wrap up my comments because I want to leave time for questions. I know that your counsel may have a comment or two before we turn to questions. Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon, Board. I just want to say and assure you that our role in the General Counsel's office is to serve as a liaison, to work very closely with the firm in any data collection, working very closely with school board employees in terms of discovery, in terms of setting up witness interviews, and so on and so forth. But we, myself and Lisa Coring, intend to be very much involved and ensure that board reports find their way to the board so that you all are up to speed on what's going on in the case if the board decides to go with this. Thank you.
Ms. Brill?
Thank you. So I have 2 questions for you. I'll take them one at a time. The first one is were school districts involved in the class action lawsuit of the tobacco industry back in the 90s?
According to Mr. Mayor, no.
Right, I didn't remember, but I wasn't sitting up here then. So then my other question, and trying to phrase it so it doesn't sound bad, but what's in it? What's the advantage to you to have us join? It's not out of great benevolence, I'm sure. Is it that we bring you more witnesses? I understand it doesn't cost us anything. I understand the impact on the students. But really, what's in it? What advantage is it to the lawsuit to have school districts on board?
That's a great question, and let me comment on the first question. The primary reason that the lead plaintiffs in the tobacco litigation of the 1990s were entities that had expended money, frankly, billions of dollars, caring for sick smokers. So, for example, Medicaid dollars. That's why the states really were the lead plaintiffs. Today, cities, states, and counties really haven't had to expend much in the way of resources to deal with youth vaping. If a lot of these kids get sick, if some of these current acute illnesses that you're seeing in the news, if those continue, that may change. But today, those entities like cities, counties, and states don't really have a claim for economic damages. Schools, on the other hand, do. Schools, as I said, are on the front lines, and they are spending increasing amounts of resources to try to fight it and to try to deal with it. So in terms of an entity that actually has a very legitimate claim for economic damages, school districts very much do. And insofar as we're able to tell, they're almost the only one right now, other than individual kids or parents on behalf of individual kids. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you. And just as a follow-up, as you're speaking, I'm thinking, well, you know what? Cities, municipalities, and counties do have an impact. When fire rescue has to go out, if someone's sick and laying on the floor, maybe that's also another group that you should entertain, because there is a cost to the community. I understand the cost to the schools, but I would think there's a greater impact to the county and the municipalities as a whole.
Yeah, well, your point's a good one, and I guess I was speaking in broad stroke, and maybe it was too broad a stroke. You're right. If an EMS crew has to go out and deal with a kid who's become acutely ill, that is a cost. It is not of an order of magnitude, for example, as we see currently in the opioid litigation, where one state, Ohio, is spending over $1 billion a year on those sorts of things. But I do take your point. Thank you.
Mrs. Rico?
Thank you. As a point of information, as I understand it, the model that's being proposed is for the school district, for this school district to be its independent plaintiff to file its own action. So we aren't adding into some other suit that other people are in already or other entities are in. It's going to be our own case. It may be joined later for discovery purposes or other purposes as the case goes forward. So I just wanted to make that point clear.
Ms. Brill?
So then as a follow-up, is there cost then incurred by us?
No, that's what we had indicated, that this is a fully contingent case, including costs, and only if there is a net gain will there be any fees paid to the attorney teams, as well as costs on a contingency fee basis.
Ms. Brill?
Last question, and staff time, will there be staff time devoted?
So obviously, there will be some staff time, devoted, both with my staff and district staff. We did also, and so that's been covered. That's been addressed. Thank you.
Mrs. Andrews?
Thank you, and I'm happy that you're here. Many of us just returned from the Council of Great City Schools in Louisville, Kentucky, where we have our professional in-service. As I said at the board meeting on Saturday, this major discussion came up, and the Council of Great City Schools is very interested in educating school boards across the nation on this issue. They're actually going to send out a survey to find out how many school districts are really aware of it, or planning to do something about it, or if they have done something about it. We were lucky from Palm Beach County because we've been discussing this for a while. So it is at the national level, and it's being discussed as to how we do something about it as school districts across the nation.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mrs. Whitfield?
I just wanted to make a real quick comment about this. First of all, I think this is great to have you here. Thank you very much for participating. I have a sixth grader, and I want to say 6-year-old. That's not right yet. So I have a sixth grader, and so this year she's been coming back home after school and really letting me know how many of her sixth grade friends are vaping, which just blows my mind that it is really, I feel like more children are vaping at younger ages than they were even smoking at those ages. So I love that we're getting involved in this. One of the things that worries me, coming from listening to what happened in the big tobacco payout, was how much money that came out of that didn't go into the cases of education and prevention and things like that I think are so crucial. And I think that's one of the roles that we stand to really play a very big part, is that if we were to be successful in this, I would hope that, just to staff, that we would put a big portion of that funding into prevention, because I do think this is going to be an ongoing problem. Hopefully they can figure out these situations, and maybe vaping doesn't exist anymore, but knowing that it probably will, how we can really prevent our children from taking this up in the first place. I think if we can make sure to put a portion of hopefully any gains that we get to really helping the children never get into this, that would really make me happy. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Robinson?
Thank you. So 2 questions. First, I need General Counsel to explain to me again, if our in-house people are spending time working on tell me the role of all these lawyers sitting here.
Okay, so the litigation team that you see from the two external law firms will obviously be handling the case, the litigation, the pleadings. They will be handling all the discovery, et cetera. The role of our team, just to assure the board, is that we will be liaisoning with them. We will be assisting in gathering witnesses, documents at their request, sort of navigating the system, and also keeping the board informed. That was really the point of the informational, that we've addressed this in a proposed agreement where all information would flow through us, updates to the board in real time, just like you get in the other cases, so that we would make sure that you'd be fully apprised.
Thank you. And the second part is, and this might be more directed to our legal staff, but the entire team, I would like to ensure that you also teach and brief the students in the Law Academy at Palm Beach Lakes High School from beginning to end. They need to learn from this as well, see it in action.
Well, I would like to address that. This year, as well as other years, the Office of General Counsel has, adopted the Law Academy, so we have scheduled trainings and presentations with the Law Academy, and we can certainly include members of the team. I think it would be awesome. You'll love it. It's really exciting. So that's a great idea, and we can weave that into our work with them. That'd be very great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So we have an agenda item on it, the special meeting that comes up right after this workshop, where the board can decide whether or not they want to institute the litigation with this team. So we'll be discussing it at the special meeting. Mr. Superintendent, do you have anything else?
No, sir. Thank you so much for your presentation today.
Thank you all.
Thank you. We need a motion to adjourn the workshop. Motion by Mrs. Andrews, seconded by Mr. Whitfield. All in favor, all opposed. Motion carries 7-0. Just a few minutes, we'll get started on the special meeting.